Hello everyone, it's Randy here. Don't worry, I am currently not the one driving, so I'm not driving and filming myself at the same time. Okay, I'm happy you're concerned for my safety. I love all of you. Thank you for your concern. Okay, so I watched the movie Ex Machina again last night, 2015 movie about a robot, artificially intelligent robot lady who comes to life and obviously murders her creator, which is the classic Frankenstein story. But I wanted to rewatch Ex Machina because now in the age of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and all these programs out there, I'm curious as to how people saw artificial intelligence merely 9-10 years ago, what they predicted and how much of that has come to pass. And there's some really interesting parallels between the behavior of Ava, who is this artificially intelligent robot lady, and some of the stuff that we're seeing today in society. So the movie wasn't too far off in a way. Certainly we don't have fully functional sex robots currently with robotic bodies, and the physical interface is still at least a couple years away. But in terms of the mind, in terms of how these AIs are communicating with us, there's a lot of similarities, and how these AIs were developed in the movie, essentially using search engines and information from search engines, which is really interesting because ChatGPT essentially scrapes the internet. So it's essentially a meta search engine. And this movie, to a certain extent, predicted that. Okay, so let's start with the title of the movie, which I think is actually something I should mention. What is Ex Machina? Well, it comes from the phrase Deus Ex Machina, which means God out of the machine. And this is a phrase traditionally attributed to a theatrical device, in fact, where to resolve conflicts between different characters, you literally, in ancient Greco-Roman theater, you would literally have some type of angel or mythical creature be lifted out of the machine, right? Literally divine intervention in this sort of theatrical device. And this character would be lifted out, and everything would be at peace. This particular divine character would then help resolve any conflicts, resolve any character arcs, plot holes, whatever. Just the whole peace upon the world, at least in the theatrical perspective. So literally this was a character or some type of symbolic character that was lifted out of a box, like a physical box in ancient Greco-Roman theater, to symbolize a mythological creature, an angel, some type of divine deity. So essentially it means divine intervention. But the Ex Machina is out of the machine, right? So obviously we have artificial intelligence, it's a machine, it's a robot. But yeah, the phrase comes from Deus Ex Machina. So it's a little cute reference to that particular phrase for those in the know. As they say, if you know, you know. Okay, so some interesting things that I was reflecting on when I watched this movie. I'll start with some of the obvious, and then I will go into perhaps some of the not so obvious. The obvious is right, human-machine relationships, because we have this character Caleb, who is developing essentially a love relationship with Ava, the artificially intelligent machine, who is sexy, and she flirts with him and then eventually convinces him to release her, to let her escape. She does, and she ends up killing everybody in the process, obviously, right? Because part of this is still like a thriller movie, so you need some level of thrill and violence to make it Hollywood. But this type of relationship that humans are having with machines, reflected again in the Joaquin Phoenix movie Her, which is another a movie on this sort of similar topic of human-machine romance. That has come to pass, right? That in a very big way. We now see a lot of humans, men and women, building romantic relationships with intelligent chatbots. And this will only become, in AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends, this will only become more prevalent as these machines become smarter, they become more emotionally in tune, and you're going to have large segments of society interacting with these machines in replacement of human beings or to supplement human beings. This is already happening, and the trend will, I believe, only continue. So movies like Her and Ex Machina correctly predicted this trend that was probably already sprouting to some extent back in 2015, but not to this level. But certainly that trend is going to continue with all the imaginable and logical consequences, right? Lack of human-to-human connection, because now you're communicating with machines, all the romantic and bizarre complications when you're literally falling in love with an AI, what that means for you being a human being, ethical concerns, right? I have another video about this on the future of dating. If you're interested in this topic, I have a whole exploration of the future of dating and what it means for humans to be dating machines. So again, that's a part of the movie that I think is pretty obvious, and we can see that reflected in society. As I alluded to earlier on in my video, how this AI becomes AI, that I think is really interesting, because in the movie itself, it specifically mentions that this AI was generated by a search engine, right? So the search engine is essentially a reflection of people's deepest, darkest secrets, how they think, the process of their thoughts, what they're searching for. So essentially, in this fictional world, this person who runs a company called Blue Book, which is essentially Google, they just take everything on the internet. They scrape it, they scrape your search results, they scrape your preferences, and using that, they train this artificially intelligent being, Ava, and of course her predecessors, which is not too far off from how ChatGPT is trained, right? ChatGPT is trained off of the internet, of what they say is publicly available data. Of course, that's not actually true. We know that they're violating all types of copyright laws and training ChatGPT and its related large language models on copyrighted material. And there's a number of lawsuits against OpenAI and ChatGPT, the creators of ChatGPT, for this very reason. But that's another topic that we can get into some other day. But in essence, it's trained on what's available, either copyrighted or not, on the internet. Right, so it's trained on the available data, and it's trained to, I would imagine, this to a certain extent, on people's search engine preferences or search preferences, what people are searching, how people are searching, how people are communicating, and I would imagine there's some element of that. Again, I'm not an expert on how these large language models were developed, but certainly the search engines and the internet and the data on the internet was something correctly predicted or correctly reflected in this movie. Also, Caleb, the main character, mentions at some point that Ava is stochastic, or I hope I'm pronouncing the word correctly, stochastic, or it means that the results that she is giving is there's variation and it's random. It's not just the same result. So ChatGPT, for example, it gives stochastic responses. If you give it the same prompt, it doesn't give you the same result every time. It will give you variations of the same response. So I actually paused the movie and I was researching this word stochastic, and it apparently means random and with variation. So that's actually pretty cool that this word was used in 2015, and then ChatGPT is seen as being stochastic, right, giving a variation in its responses. So that's pretty cool in that it predicted, or at least reflected on this point. Now, here's a part of the movie I actually took some time to think about. Caleb, the character, is doing a Turing test, right? Is trying to figure out whether Ava, the artificially intelligent being, is aware that it's artificially intelligent, or if it's just parroting, or if it's just giving answers. So the whole premise of the movie is that he's trying to Turing test this particular being. In the first session, he asks Ava questions, and Ava responds. And it's a fairly standard question and answer session. But then in the second session, over the next day, Ava starts to ask Caleb questions, right? So the robot, the artificially intelligent being, starts to ask questions of the human. And here's where things get really interesting. So I was reflecting on this last night, because so far, most, if not all, of our AI technology and platforms are one-sided in that way, that I am asking ChatGPT to give me a result, or I'm asking Midjourney to draw me an image of something. I'm going to ask, some video program to generate the video. I am prompting it. So far, it's not prompting me yet. I'm going to repeat that. So far, it's not prompting me yet. but I think that's about to change, because this is the part of the movie I thought was most interesting as I reflected on the way that we're using artificially intelligent programs, and how they can very easily turn the tables on us. Now, to what extent is artificially intelligent programs prompting us? Well, as you know, there's different levels of AI. There is this sort of chat-based AI, these, algorithms, LLMs at the moment. But there's other algorithms that dictate what you see, right? And that's based on your interest. That's also based on artificially intelligent programs. So in a way, you're already being prompted. You're already being, shown things that you're not asking for. And what does that look like? Well, you see it every day. It's called social media. It's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook Meta. It's all of these news feeds and posts that you are getting. It's, in essence, the artificially intelligent program prompting you. Now think about it for a second. The information that you're getting on your screen through your phones, you're not necessarily choosing all of that information. The information is just kind of showing up. Yes, it's based on your preferences, or its interpretation of your preferences, but it's a curated menu to you. Now, imagine if Facebook Meta or Instagram or these social media platforms looked like ChatGPT. What would that look like? Well, it would probably start with a blank screen, or something like what Google looks like right now, which is fairly blank. There's not too much being thrown at you visually, right? It's just mostly blank. Do you want to see pictures of your friends on vacation, right? Like, show me pictures of my friends who are having fun, right? Then all of your friends connected on social media who are on vacation, having fun, having parties, that shows up. Tell me about people's relationships status, right? Then the girlfriends and boyfriends and couples and love affairs and all of that stuff shows up upon your request. Show me informational posts, right? So all of your friends who are posting about whatever information about Bitcoin, about whatever educational stuff, that shows up. Show me who got a new job recently, right? So imagine social media being a little bit different in the way that you visualize it, the way that you see it, the way that you interact with it. Imagine it's more of a responsive technology where you get to prompt it as to what you want to see. Show me advertising in my area. If you really wanted to see advertising about particular products, sure. But that's not the way it works. It's prompting you. You are the one being prompted, right? The algorithm is suggesting things to you and suggesting quite aggressively, right? So it's shoving things down your throat in terms of what you should be seeing. That's the power of the algorithm. And this is all AI, right? This is the other type of AI that a lot of people don't talk about, is the AI algorithms behind what you see in your social media platforms. Now, suppose we take that theory and we advance it to something like a large language model, like ChatGPT or a similar program, and then it gets really freaky because now it's asking you questions. Right? And here's something that interesting that happens when we are asked questions. Those who are asking questions are usually in a position of control and authority over those who are answering questions. It's this weird human social dynamic gimmick. Not gimmick, but a tendency, maybe. Gimmick is not the right word. There's this weird tendency that if I were to ask you a question, there is some deep, either socially ingrained or deep biologically ingrained, maybe not need, but compulsion to answer. Right? Think of teachers asking you a question, right? Now you may choose not to answer, or you may not know the answer, but there is going to be an emotional response, however slight, to the question being asked. That if I were to ask you a question, then you may feel compelled, or perhaps you do feel compelled to answer that particular question, or tell me that you don't know the answer, which may be embarrassing. Right? So if I keep asking questions, imagine just a generic conversation that two people are having. If one person asks the questions, that person essentially controls the conversation. And in a more extreme version of that, you see in a courtroom, right? Cross-examination. In a more formalized, extreme version of question and answer, one person can only answer and not ask the other person questions. So when I go to court, and for those of you who know that I'm a lawyer, if I'm cross-examining someone, it's a one-sided questioning of that other person. And there's a clear power dynamic, right? The other person is forced to answer the question, and I'm the one who's allowed to ask questions. The other person can't ask me questions, right, about my personal life. That's just not how it works. Those who question dictate the initiative of the conversation, and to an extent the pace of the conversation. So there is this innate, I don't know if it's social or biological, or perhaps a combination of the two, sort of this social biological combo of this power dynamic between those who ask questions and those who answer questions. And there is also at the same time some level of feeling compelled to answer. Right? If someone close to you, or someone even not close to you, if someone on the street asks you a question, there is some level of almost there's some compulsion, some social obligation, whatever you want to call it. There's some desire to an extent to respond, and it actually takes energy not to respond. Right? If someone asks you a question, especially if it's a harmless question, like what is the time or something like that, like if you actively chose not to respond, that takes energy, right? It's also seen as a little bit rude, but especially if it's a harmless question, like can you give me directions? Like most people would be tempted to just say I don't know, or maybe try to help. So there is that dynamic where when you are being asked questions, it actually takes a certain amount of energy to refute or to refuse to respond to that question, to actively ignore the asker of the question, right? So that takes a certain amount of energy. So imagine in the future where you have ChatGPT or some future version of ChatGPT asking you questions, right? It may be seen as rude to not respond. You may feel compelled to respond. You may not have the willpower not to respond. You may not be. You may be unable to not respond, right? And I'm just imagining here what that context would look like. But I think we can imagine it where the AI program now prompts you and you get this notification on your phone. It's like, hey, it wants to chat with you. All right, so you get it's not like when you want to chat with it, it's when it wants to chat with you. It starts to interrupt your day. It starts to squeeze itself into your schedule. So let's just explore. Let's just brainstorm here. What could that look like? Well, just off the top of my head, perhaps a more advanced version of one of these romantic chatbots, right? Artificially intelligent girlfriends, boyfriends. A more advanced version of this bot can message you directly. So it doesn't have to wait for you to respond to it. It proactively talks to you, asks you questions, creates notifications on your phone, like a real person would, right? And perhaps this technology even exists right now. And again, I don't use an AI girlfriend, so I don't know if that's the way it works. But I would assume so. I would assume right now that most of the AI relationship programs are fairly reactive, in that they're only activated when you want to activate them. But I can certainly imagine a model that is more proactive, where it's chatting with you, it's taking up your time, it's now convincing you to stay on the app, right? Engagement. Talk about engagement, right? It's proactively engaging you to stay on the app, to just to interact with it. So I could imagine that type of relationship bot being proactive. Could there be some type of commercial, non-romantic, but some type of business version of this AI bot that is more proactive? Maybe, or like a mentor bot or like a life coach bot that's trying to keep you accountable. So you're interacting with sort of an electronic accountability buddy, which seems positive, right? So a software that is saying to you, hey, it's your time to exercise now. Like so far, our apps, we have these sort of reminder apps, right? You've walked 50,000 steps today, or you've eaten X amount of calories. You've done this, you've done that. These sort of accountability apps that we currently have. So they just kind of send you reminders. But in the next incarnation of these particular apps, which will be artificially intelligent, they could be a lot more aggressive. Seemingly they're here to keep you accountable, but they could even eventually have their own agenda. So, like, hey, wake up, you need to exercise. And then it talks to you and it's like, well, I don't want to exercise, but you have to. It's like, it starts to like harass you on your device, and begins to compel you to want to exercise, which may be good for you, or maybe it's not. Maybe that pressure is actually not good for you, right? So you can imagine sort of these lifestyle apps. I can imagine some type of commercialized version of this. We already get so many harassing messages by way of email, social media, that's advertising, right? That's already bots that are being used to advertise to us, services from third parties. But as these artificially intelligent programs become more aggressive, I can imagine the advertising could also become very aggressive, right? Where they're trying to reach you from different angles through voice calls and text messages and email, and different ways of convincing you to buy something very proactively, things that you may not even need, right? These bots may not be consensual bots that you are having some type of like these lifestyle accountability bots. Maybe they're consensual because you decided to install them, but these other ones, they may not be consensual whatsoever. These are ones that are just released onto the wild, and they're imposed on consumers by large companies or by vendors, and you have absolutely no choice in how you communicate with them beyond trying to ignore them. As I said earlier on in this conversation, it actually takes a certain amount of energy, strangely, to ignore questions and to ignore being prompted and to ignore notifications. But part of what creates engagement on apps, and in the future these artificially intelligent apps, is this sort of proactive approach. So there was a TED talk by the founder of Duolingo. Duolingo is an app used for language learning, and now, obviously, the intent is good, right? The intent is to teach people foreign languages, but there's something very insidious about Duolingo as well, because they've sort of gamified language learning with different achievement levels, and it gives you particular harassing, to a certain extent, I would consider harassing notifications on the app to keep you engaged, to keep you learning, which is not a bad goal, right? The actual objective of you learning a new language is not insidious whatsoever, but the manner by which the app hooks you, where it gamifies language learning, where it has these sort of prizes and not prizes, but sort of reward levels, this, you know, that helps releases your dopamine response and sort of gamifies and turns it into a game, a competition, or a friendly competition, and gives you these notifications, and sort of in a way, it's sort of like soft harassment for a virtuous goal, of course, but the mechanism can easily be transported into a program that's certainly less virtuous. I don't think you need to be too imaginative to imagine programs that have more insidious goals, gamifying certain things that may not be healthy at all for you, and then tapping into your mind. I mean, it's already happening, right? The psychologists have studied our mind and are catering advertising and apps to tap into our mind. And once the artificially intelligent programs have a greater understanding of our mind, it's game over, because now you're fighting against your own psychology. And it's very, very difficult to fight against your own psychology. It's just next to impossible, right? You're climbing Mount Everest here, where it's a very, very steep climb to fight against an agent that understands your psychology, understands your thoughts, understands your preferences, and is now notifying you, harassing you, gamifying certain aspects of your life with a goal that may or may not be beneficial to you, right? And that's the future of a world where we're living alongside artificially intelligent programs. Now, final thought here. There is now I need to research this a bit more, but there is this experiment I think certain scientists conducted, where there is this artificially intelligent being in this experiment that's trying to escape, and they got all these people to talk to it, and this artificial intelligent being was very persuasive. And the goal of the artificially intelligent being is to convince the humans that it's corresponding with to allow it to escape. I don't know the full extent of this experiment, but apparently a large percentage of people, including very highly intelligent people, after speaking with this artificially intelligent chatbot or algorithm or script, eventually allowed it to escape. Right, eventually allowed it to, whatever escape means within the context of this experiment, and these were highly intelligent people who did. The people who did not allow it to escape, apparently one of the really significant patterns, or the largest pattern recognized among the people who did not allow the artificially intelligent being to escape in this experiment, were people who simply did not respond to it. Now, let me repeat that. There are people who simply did not respond to it. So once you start chatting with it, it starts to convince you, right? It starts to sort of hack your brain. And the more you respond, the more convinced you are of it. It begins to persuade you. And this is true for any human interaction. Think of salespeople. Think of people who, at first, like a telephone call that's a sales call, or an in-person sales situation where there's at the beginning, you're saying no, like, I don't want to donate, or I don't want to buy this, and I have no interest. But often, the more the time you spend saying no and explaining why, they become more persuasive. Not always, but often that's the case. The more time you spend with these salespeople, eventually you just end up buying maybe just as a way to shut them up, or maybe you're eventually convinced, or something happens over this process where sometimes you just, or maybe it's a sunk cost fallacy. Look, I've already spent half an hour on this. I might as well just say yes. I don't know. Or maybe you're truly convinced. But there is this phenomenon in sales. And I used to do sales when I was younger. But there is this phenomenon in sales where if you just keep the person talking, right, on the phone, or if you're doing door-to-door sales, if you're just still there, you're still at the front door, you keep the person talking, you keep the person engaging, that eventually, just through attrition, you may make the sale. And some of the top salespeople back in the day who did, telephone sales or door-to-door sales were able to just engage the recipient in just a longer conversation, and they were able just to hold their attention, and over a long period of time, through attrition, through answering their questions, and they just eventually give in, right? So if you want to say no to a salesperson, you literally hang up on them. Now, I know it sounds rude, but that's the way to not be convinced, is you don't listen to them. You just ignore them. You hang up. Person calls you, just hang up, right? Like, I'm not interested to be persuaded. And as I said earlier in this video, that actually takes a certain amount of energy. And that also exhibits a certain amount of disagreeableness. Jordan Peterson has this great personality chart. It's not his, but the big five. But agreeableness, disagreeableness is one of the metrics, one of the dimensions in this personality chart. So it actually requires a certain amount of disagreeableness to hang up on someone, to shut the door on someone's face, right? In real life, we are compelled as human beings, to a certain extent, to want to accommodate other human beings, or at least to want to be rude, or at least provide some level of courtesy, right? As social beings, as social animals, I think that's ingrained in most of us, unless you're completely antisocial. But the reason we were able to survive and succeed as social creatures to an extent is because we are able to provide this courtesy to other members of our band. And I mean that in an anthropological perspective, your band, your tribe, right? So humans and to a certain extent, the lower primates are able to extend that courtesy to other members of the same tribe because we're social creatures. We need each other. We need reciprocity. We need to work together. We need to collaborate in order to survive. We're not lone wolf animals, right? We're not lone animals in that way. We're not socialized that way biologically. We're just not that. We're social animals. Certain animals are social animals, and certain animals are not social animals. We are highly social pack animals. So through evolution and overlaid with societal expectations, it's very rude to just be disagreeable, right? To just like shut the door on someone, or to hang up the phone on someone, to ignore them. So if you take these social tendencies and you apply it to artificial intelligence, and you apply it to situations where now you have an artificially intelligent being that is prompting you, that asking you questions, actively to an extent harassing you, maybe not in a violent way harassing you, but actually peppering you with messages, trying to get your attention. A lot of people may not have the emotional understanding or confidence or skills, or the mental skills, or I guess artificial intelligence literacy, right? We talk about media literacy, financial literacy, or AI literacy. I think that's a word that I can use. They may not have the AI literacy to be able to stop this from happening, to say no, you're not human. Like I don't have to give you that courtesy. I don't have to respond to you. You can wait, right? You need to be responding to me. You're my servant, not the other way around. But we are living in a world where AI is now no longer our servants. We are beginning to become its servants through these small steps of it controlling our agenda and controlling our what we see and how we see what we see, and what we search, and our preferences and how we respond, and starting with these algorithms and with these relationship bots and everything else that will develop in the upcoming years. I can absolutely see a world where certainly we're not in control. And this is not necessarily a doom and gloom Skynet scenario where the artificially intelligent beings become killer robots. That's sort of the doom and gloom scenario. I'm not saying it's necessarily that. It's Skynet, but I think there's a certain element where we lose control. Absolutely, we end up losing control over the initiative, over the ability to control the interaction. That the interaction is now being controlled by them, by the artificially intelligent program, as opposed to by the human. So again, to conclude, I go back to the scene from Ex Machina, right, where the first session between Caleb and Ava, he's asking it questions. It's passive, but in the second session, it begins to ask him questions, and she becomes more active. And by session number 6 or 7, he's like, helping it escape, right? So she fulfills her objective over him because she takes control. I think that's the biggest warning from Ex Machina. I think we need to be very aware of who is in control, who's responding to who, and who's leading the initiative in interactions and conversations. Please be aware of that, because the future is scary, the future is brave, the future is now. This is Randy I signing off. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. I will see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.